1,000 years of peace makes the universe forget what humans are. The galactic concord had grown vast and complacent, a tapestry of over 12,000 intelligent species bound by trade, treaties, and soft diplomacy. Wars were studied, not fought. Battlefields existed only in history simulations, narrated by bored scholars who'd never heard the scream of plasma or smelled burning ozone. And yet, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, something ancient stirred. It began with small things: communication blackouts along the Perseid line, missing freighters, sensor ghosts on the rim of the Vargathai expanse. The Concord Council dismissed them as statistical noise. After all, there hadn't been a real war in over a millennium. But for those who remembered, it wasn't noise. It was a pattern. Admiral Kale of the Ketheri fleet was among the few old enough to remember the name humanity. His scales were pale now, dulled by age, but his memory remained sharp. He'd seen the archives, the wars of the expansion age, when humans had erupted from Sol like wildfire and reshaped the stars through raw willpower and madness. They were predators, he told the council, his voice low. Efficient. Creative. Unstoppable when provoked. Do not make the mistake of thinking they've changed. The council had laughed, their holographic forms shimmering in the chamber's light. Admiral, hissed the Cillian delegate, humans are relics. They've lived in isolation since the Treaty of the Glass Moon. No weapons, no fleets, no colonies. They are artists now. Historians. Poets. They are as docile as your scholars claim. Kale only blinked, slow and deliberate. Then why, he asked, do they still maintain the Sol defense network under full power? That silenced the chamber for a moment. Then the laughter resumed, softer now, forced. The council voted. The matter was dropped. 2 months later, the first Concord ship vanished near Proxima Centauri. When the humans finally appeared on the galactic channels, they did not come pleading. They did not come angry. They came smiling. A woman stood on the broadcast, middle-aged, dark hair streaked with silver, wearing a black uniform without insignia. The patch on her shoulder bore a symbol long forgotten, the stylized wings of the Terran Defense Force. "This is Fleet Marshal Ariadne Holt," she said, her voice calm. "We have received your declaration of hostilities." Her eyes gleamed. "On behalf of Earth and her colonies, we accept." The transmission ended. Silence swept through the Concord networks. The council chamber buzzed with disbelief. War? With humans? Impossible. Their fleet had been dismantled. Their shipyards decommissioned. Their weapons locked under interstellar treaty. And yet, one by one, hidden human outposts came alive. Stations once thought abandoned flared with power signatures. Long-dormant satellites aligned, whispering to each other across the void. Old codes reactivated, ones no one had seen in 1,000 years. Within a week, every major Concord data hub recorded the same chilling line of text. Protocol Iron Dawn, humanity returns. At first, the Concord dismissed it as posturing. A bluff. A remnant of an outdated defense AI running rogue. Then the Battle of Arcadia Station happened. A Concord patrol, 3 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought intercepted what they believed was a smuggling convoy near the edge of human space. They demanded surrender. The human vessels complied, at least, that's what the Concord captain thought. The convoy's transponders blinked off, replaced by ancient identifiers that hadn't existed in the registry for centuries. TDF Valkyrie, TDF Resolute, TDF Revenant. What happened next was recorded in the Concord archives as Event 0. The dreadnought's sensors caught a distortion, then its shields folded inwards, as if space itself had been torn apart. Beams of blue light, impossibly precise, lanced through armor like paper. In less than 20 seconds, 3 Concord ships were reduced to vapor. The humans didn't transmit any demands. They didn't broadcast warnings. They simply left. The wreckage of Arcadia Station drifted in silence for days before the first investigators arrived. They found fragments of hull plating marked with a motto etched by hand. "We tried peace. Now we remember war." Across the galaxy, fear spread like infection. The Concord began mobilizing fleets for the first time in a millennium, scrambling to assemble ships that had only ever been ceremonial. But doctrine was rusty. Officers were politicians now. Crews were scientists and explorers who had never fired a weapon in anger. Meanwhile, humanity moved like a storm. Unknown to the Concorde, the Sol Defense Network wasn't a relic, it was an ark. For centuries, humanity had quietly evolved beneath the surface of peace. They had turned warfare into art, their fleets hidden under lunar crusts and gas giant storms, cloaked in silence. And now, as the 1,000-year peace crumbled, humanity was not afraid. They laughed. For them, the peace had never been trust. It had been a pause, a promise they'd made to the galaxy after they'd won their last war. And like all promises made by humans, it came with an expiration date. Section 1 Summary. The 1,000-year peace begins to fracture. Alien complacency meets human preparedness. The galaxy declares war on Earth and humanity smiles. They said the humans were finished. They said Earth had disarmed. They said the 1,000-year peace had tamed the monsters of Sol. They were wrong. The first human fleet appeared over Epsilon Eridani, silent, cold, and gleaming like obsidian knives against the star's light. 30 ships, formation perfect, hulls black and unmarked. They emitted no drive signatures, no comms, no heat. The Concorde scouts mistook them for debris until the debris moved. Admiral Kale, now reinstated to active command, watched the tactical feed from his flagship Vexor Prime. His scaled hands trembled. "They've learned stealth that bends light itself," he whispered. "Their ships, they breathe with the void." The fleet's flagship transmitted a single signal across all frequencies. TDF Iron Dawn, fleet activated. That name rippled through the networks like a curse from the past. The Iron Dawn had been a myth, a secret weapon Earth supposedly built during the last galactic war, then dismantled after the treaty. No records survived of its design. The only known reference came from a Terran proverb: "When dawn returns, darkness burns." Now the dawn had returned. At the Concorde High Command, panic brewed beneath polished words. Fleets scrambled from every core world, fleets that hadn't seen combat in centuries. Engineers tried to retrofit diplomatic cruisers with weapons, while tacticians dug through old archives, desperate to find strategies that could counter the humans' unpredictable warfare. But humans didn't fight predictably. They never had. In the shadows of Titan's orbit, Fleet Marshal Ariadne Holt stood on the command deck of the Valkyrie, gazing at the holographic map of the galaxy. Her face was calm, but her eyes gleamed with purpose. "Signal all captains," she ordered. "Initiate Black Horizon Protocol." Her officers exchanged glances, some fearful, others thrilled. One dared to ask, "Marshal, that protocol hasn't been used since the siege of Andromeda." Holt smiled faintly. "Exactly. Let's remind them what human means." The Concorde counterattack. When the Concorde launched its first counterstrike, it came with overwhelming force: 5 fleets, 800 ships, and a dozen species coordinating under one banner. Their target, the human outpost at Proxima Gate, a relay hub guarding the path to Sol. The aliens expected resistance. They didn't expect annihilation. The Proxima outpost looked abandoned, a cluster of stations orbiting a dim red dwarf, seemingly lifeless. The Concorde fleet approached cautiously, scanning for traps. None appeared. Then, without warning, the star itself changed. Solar flares erupted, not natural ones, but controlled, sculpted by gravitational field arrays hidden in the corona. Massive energy tendrils lashed outward, striking Concorde ships with impossible precision. Shield systems overloaded in seconds. Plasma storms cascaded through their formations. And from the heart of that solar inferno emerged the Iron Dawn. 30 human warships cut through the radiation storm like wraiths. Their hulls shimmered with adaptive fields, bending incoming fire. Instead of missiles, they fired kinetic lances, rods of tungsten accelerated to a fraction of light speed. No heat. No plasma trails. Just silent, instant destruction. The Concorde dreadnought Varan's pride tried to retreat. It didn't make it. The human flagship, Valkyrie, fired a single kinetic round through 20 kilometers of its armor. The dreadnought split apart without a sound. The battle lasted 7 minutes. The Concorde lost 780 ships. The humans lost none. A message to the galaxy. Hours later, every comms array in the galaxy lit up. A human broadcast, open frequency. Fleet Marshal Holt appeared again, this time standing against a backdrop of stars, Sol's light glimmering behind her. To the Concorde and its allies, she began, voice calm, almost kind. We warned you 1,000 years ago, leave humanity alone. We asked for peace, and we kept it. But you mistook peace for weakness. You forgot what we are. We do not conquer. We do not invade. We survive. And when the galaxy threatens that survival, we remind it why the stars once feared the word human. She paused, letting the silence carry the weight of history. You declared war. We accept. But understand, this is not vengeance. This is education. Then she smiled. It wasn't cruel. It was inevitable. Lesson 1. Never wake something that dreams in fire. The transmission ended. Across the stars, alien worlds watched in terror. Civilizations that had grown used to comfort now trembled at the thought of battle. Propaganda channels called humanity relics of barbarism. But some species whispered in private that perhaps, just perhaps, the humans had been right to fear peace. Admiral Kale read the reports in silence. Entire fleets gone. Every AI model predicting catastrophic loss ratios. The human tactics defied logic, unpredictable, chaotic, yet with a strange elegance that machine minds couldn't replicate. He closed the report and whispered an old human phrase he'd once read in their archives. In chaos, we find creation. The Council called for surrender. But pride, that oldest of alien sins, would not allow it. And so they prepared a strike, a desperate gambit to end humanity's return before the war reached the core worlds. They would strike at Earth itself. End of Section 2 Summary. The Iron Dawn returns, unleashing the fury of ancient human warfare. The Concorde's counterattack fails catastrophically. Humanity reclaims its title as the galaxy's apex predator, and the aliens, terrified, plan a last gamble, an assault on Earth. The Concorde called it Operation Final Dawn. To the humans, it was simply called the Invitation. The March to Sol. Across the galaxy, every remaining fleet that could still move was gathered. Nearly 2,000 ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, the largest armada assembled in 10 centuries. Their goal, strike at Sol, the cradle of humanity. They believed that if Earth fell, humanity's will would break. But humanity had never built its strength on a single planet. Still, the Council insisted, cut off the head, and the body will wither. The fleet's journey took 11 days through folded space. As they neared the solar system's edge, sensors began to fail. Warp lanes flickered. Navigation drifted. The admiral in charge, a Vorthan named Grawl, ordered manual plotting. He thought it was interference. It wasn't. He was flying into the largest active defense grid ever constructed in the known universe. The silence before the storm. When the fleet entered the Oort cloud, everything went quiet. No transmissions. No beacons. No radar echoes from the inner planets. Only the voice of Admiral Grawl on the command channel. Forward, by the Council's decree. Show them that peace has made us strong. As they advanced, ships began to vanish. Not explode. Not burn. Vanish. Grawl's sensors showed shadows where ships should have been echoes of displacement. Then came a transmission, faint and steady across every frequency. Welcome home. The fleet stopped. From the darkness of the Kuiper Belt, human ships began to uncloak, not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. Their formation was flawless, their weapons cold and dark, awaiting only a command. At their center hung the old blue planet, glowing faintly beyond the distance, beautiful, fragile, ancient. But the aliens couldn't see the truth from here. They couldn't see that Earth was no longer what it had been. The battle for Sol. Open fire, Admiral Grawl roared. The alien fleet unleashed a storm, plasma, ion beams, particle cannons. A wave of light brighter than any sunrise. But it didn't reach its target. A shimmering barrier flared to life, not a shield, but a curtain of gravity. The humans had laced the solar system with gravitic lenses, bending space itself around their home. Energy weapons curved harmlessly away, redirected into the void. Then the counterattack came. Human kinetic weapons tore through enemy lines with invisible precision. No heat. No light. Just destruction. One Concorde cruiser disintegrated without a sound, another folded in half before its captain could scream. "Where is their command ship?" someone yelled. "There isn't one," replied an officer, terrified. "They're all command ships." Every human vessel operated autonomously, guided by an integrated mind-web distributed command intelligence. Even when one ship fell, the rest learned instantly. It was like fighting an organism made of metal, thought, and vengeance. The shield of Gaia. Hours into the battle, the aliens finally pushed past the asteroid belt, breaking through into the inner system. Their scanners locked onto Earth, the prize. But as they neared, something unexpected happened. The moon split apart. Not destroyed, opened. Panels unfolded, revealing vast rings of alloy and light. The lunar core itself was a weapon, an ancient construct hidden for a millennium, the Gaia shield. Massive emitters formed a lattice between the moon and Earth's orbit, creating a shimmering sphere of protection. The aliens fired everything they had, and every shot dissolved like dust in sunlight. From inside the shield, humanity watched. Cities on Earth's surface gleamed with energy fields, continents alive with defensive arrays. Civilians didn't panic. They gathered on rooftops, in arcologies, on sky decks, watching the fireworks like it was a festival. Children pointed at the sky as streaks of light carved across the heavens. Old veterans raised glasses in silence. The Earth didn't tremble. It laughed. A voice from Earth. The alien admiral demanded communication with the humans. He expected military codes, strategic bargaining. Instead, a single feed opened, showing the face of a human child. Maybe 12 years old. Freckled. Smiling. "Hello," the child said cheerfully. "You came all this way to fight us?" Admiral Grawl's voice broke. "Who are you?" The child tilted their head. "Everyone." Behind them, the skyline of a Terran megacity shimmered, towers wreathed in auroras of plasma, skycraft gliding in perfect formation. "You don't understand," the child said softly. "Peace didn't make us weak. It gave us time to evolve, to remember who we were, and to become something more." Then the signal fractured, and the stars burned white. The second dawn. The moon's superstructure ignited. Gravitic waves rippled through the solar system. Human ships aligned in perfect sync, channeling the Gaia shield's power through their hulls. Every star within 50 light-years flared brighter for a moment, a phenomenon later called the second dawn. When it ended, the Concorde fleet was gone. Vaporized. No wreckage. No survivors. Only silence remained. Admiral Grawl's final transmission, captured in fragments, was a whisper. They weren't defending, they were demonstrating. Aftermath. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations went dark for days, paralyzed by disbelief. Their leaders argued, some calling for surrender, others for vengeance. But vengeance against what? The humans didn't invade. They didn't conquer. They simply restored the borders of their peace, then sent a message to every world. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. Do not mistake laughter for mercy. The message ended with 3 words, ancient and simple. The Iron Dawn watches. End of section 3 summary. The Concorde brings war to Earth, but finds that humanity has transcended its old limits. The Gaia shield, the second dawn, and the laughter of Earth mark the end of the alien offensive and the rebirth of fear across the stars. They called it the war that lasted 7 days. For the galaxy, it was a cataclysm. For humanity, it was a reminder. The silence after the storm. When the last Concorde transmission faded, the stars grew still. No fleets advanced. No threats remained. The entire galactic network went dark, then flickered back to life under new encryption keys, human ones. The Iron Dawn fleet didn't move to conquer. They simply waited. Humanity had nothing to prove. They had already won. In the council chambers on Varith Prime, the surviving delegates met under flickering lights. The chamber, once filled with laughter and arrogance, now echoed with quiet dread. Admiral Kale was among them, His scales dulled, his eyes tired. He had seen too much, both the folly of the council and the terrible beauty of what the humans had become. "They didn't destroy us," said the Vorthan delegate, voice trembling. "No," Kale replied softly. "They're giving us a choice." On the central display, a transmission began to play, not from spies, not from intercepted data, but sent directly to the council's chamber. The human message. Fleet Marshal Ariadne Holt appeared again. But this time, she wasn't in a war room or aboard a ship. She stood in an open field somewhere on Earth. Sunlight spilled across green grass. Wind moved through tall trees. Behind her, people laughed. Children ran. The world was alive, unscarred by war. "Council of the Concord," she began, her tone steady. "1,000 years ago, we signed a peace. You broke it." She looked up at the sky, then back at the camera. "You declared war on the species that taught the galaxy what war is. And when we fought back, you saw what we've become." She gestured toward the horizon, where streaks of silver gleamed, the Iron Dawn fleet drifting quietly above the atmosphere. "We didn't build weapons to conquer. We built them so we'd never have to use them. For 1,000 years, we hoped peace would last. But peace built on ignorance isn't peace. It's amnesia." Her expression softened. "You feared us once. Then you pitied us. Now you fear us again. You shouldn't. We don't want your worlds. We don't want your slaves or your resources. We want your understanding. The 1,000-year peace is over not because we broke it, but because you never learned what it truly meant." She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "Peace is not the absence of war. It is the mastery of it." And then, in a voice that carried across the stars, "We have mastered it." The screen faded to black. The new accord. Days later, humanity summoned every remaining government to a neutral system, Sigma Orionis. No threats. No armies. Just an invitation. The delegates arrived cautiously, expecting traps or demands. Instead, they found a great orbital ring, built of light and crystal, orbiting a young blue star. At its center waited humans, not soldiers, but ambassadors. Artists, scientists, philosophers. Humanity's greatest minds, not its weapons. Fleet Marshal Holt was there, too, though her uniform bore no insignia now. She greeted each delegation personally, shaking claws, tendrils, and hands alike. "I'm not here to rule," she said. "I'm here to listen." That moment marked the birth of the Second Concord, not ruled by fear, but by respect. Humanity stood not as conquerors, but as equals, with the power to end the galaxy, and the wisdom not to. Admiral Kale's reflection. Years later, Admiral Kale retired to a quiet world on the galactic rim. He spent his days recording the history of what the aliens now called the Dawn War. He wrote, "We believed the humans had grown soft, that peace had diluted them. We did not understand that peace to them was not surrender, but patience." He paused in his dictation, watching the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Iron Dawn still patrolled, silent sentinels of the peace they'd reforged. They laughed at war, not because they mocked it, he continued, but because they had learned to master their fear of it. He smiled faintly. "And perhaps, one day, so will we. The human future." On Earth, the world thrived. Cities shimmered with solar towers and orbital elevators. The moon's weapon systems were deactivated, or so the rest of the galaxy believed. Humanity resumed exploration, sending fleets beyond known space. But the Iron Dawn remained. It was never decommissioned, only silent. Waiting. Fleet Marshal Holt, now old and grey, stood on the observation deck of the Valkyrie. Her aide approached quietly. "Do you think they'll ever come again?" She smiled. "Maybe. Someone always does. The galaxy has a short memory." The aide hesitated. "And if they do?" Holt looked out at the stars, billions of them, cold and beautiful. "Then we'll remind them," she said. She turned away, her voice fading into the hum of the ship. "The Iron Dawn doesn't sleep. It just dreams." The ship glided forward, disappearing into the black, a shadow among stars. Epilogue, the laugh. Centuries later, in the halls of the Second Concord, A young alien student studied the war archives. The final recording, Fleet Marshal Holt's address, ended with the same image broadcast across the galaxy that day. Her final transmission wasn't words. It was a sound. A laugh, quiet, human, and warm. Not cruel. Not mocking. Just knowing. The student paused the recording, unsettled yet fascinated. Why did they laugh? He asked his tutor. The old scholar smiled. Because they finally understood peace, and the rest of us still don't. End of section 4 summary. Humanity ends the war without conquest, establishing a new kind of peace based on respect and wisdom. The Iron Dawn becomes both myth and guardian, proof that true peace is not the absence of conflict, but the strength to choose restraint.